Neurodivergent. So that's your autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. I treat those with the symptoms being kind of my primary focus, because honestly, autism spectrum disorder can be purely genetic. I think a lot of it can come from PTSD, because if you think about kids who are traumatized or abused, their ability to interact with the world becomes abnormal to a degree. So if this kid's getting yelled at and they're afraid that they're going to get hurt from mom or dad, then they're going to walk around the world looking at people, kind of feeling that fear. And so they're going to come across as odd, or maybe not quite as verbal or looking you in the eye. So there isn't like a medication for or autism or whatever. It's more like, what are the symptoms? What's causing it? Is it because they're in constant fight or flight, because you're afraid you're gonna die or get attacked or whatnot? Then we need to approach calming that central nervous system down. A lot of times what I'll do is use like an SSRI. So it's like your Zoloft, Prozac, whatnot. I know a lot of people are really hesitant to use those. So there's other options as well. But the main thing is figuring out how to get out of fight or flight and get into that rest and digest. That changes people's lives, because they're no longer walking around like the lion's going to get them at any moment. It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm not worried. I'm not, thinking about all the things all day long and then becoming exhausted. The other side of this is ADHD. And again, that can be from PTSD as well. And it can very much be just a genetic neurological thing as well. What happens with the ADHD brain is it's like 15 different channels are going on, and you're trying to figure out which one to tune into. So it's really hard to stay on task, to remember things, to be present in conversation, because you're talking to somebody and there's all these things going on, and then all of a sudden you may look maybe kind of like you've got autism, because you're like, I don't know. So the interesting thing with ADHD, true ADHD people will take a stimulant like prescription crack, so Adderall or whatnot, and it doesn't cause more hyper, all the things. It actually calms the brain down. So the reverse of how they're feeling, which is chaos, it just brings calm, which is, again, very life-changing. So I'm very familiar with both of those conditions, and I don't treat it like it's a condition. I'm so curious, like, where did it come from? What was your family history like? How did it feel growing up? How do you relate to people now? And how can we support you to live the life that you have dreamed of or haven't even been able to dream of? So there's support like therapists, there's ADHD coaches, there are people who are really, really, really talented at autism spectrum disorder and can do kind of the rehab, which also involves sensory processing. So another interesting fact is people who have been diagnosed with avoidant restrictive ARFID or whatever, eating disorder, whatever. A lot of times it's because of the sensory processing, like they can't handle specific types of textures. So it's not because they're just trying to get skinny. So that's been a really interesting thing to observe over the last 4 or 5 years as well. And there are occupational therapists to help with that too. So there's just so many different avenues to treat with that condition or those symptoms. But again, I think it's really important for the practitioner to not just call it a diagnosis and throw the meds. It's what is going on underneath. So if you have questions about that, or you think you may have symptoms of either, come on in, we can talk about it and help get you feeling good. So what are the common symptoms that most, or a large portion of people come in with? Anxiety and depression, hands down, are the top ones, which is interesting because we just start with that. Like, that's just scratching the surface. PTSD. An interesting one that I've seen over the years is those vague symptoms that they've been to every doctor for. Maybe it's fatigue or just general aches and pains, or they get sick all the time and they get one lab done by their primary care, the CBC, and that's it. And they're like, you're fine, we don't know. Or they've come from Mayo and seen like every specialist and they can't figure it out. I love seeing those patients because there's always a reason for it. Sometimes it is psychological, but sometimes it's chronic viral syndrome or an autoimmune disease, or I would say rarely some sort of toxicity or whatever. But I mean, it's wild how few people in that state, like that chronic fatigue or those just chronic vague symptoms, how long they've lived with it and had zero answers. So yeah, I'm trying to think of other ones that
And you're able to help them find the answers and solutions?
yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes multiple months. I've seen a couple of my most difficult patients I've seen since 2020. And oh my gosh, the story behind it. I mean, it took 3 years before this particular patient was comfortable telling me certain things that were significantly contributing because of her past trauma and everything. And so that's why I think it's so important to build that relationship with my patients, to build that trust, to really get the personal what's the word? Yeah, that I know you. I remember your past. I know that your husband did da 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 da. I know you have these two kids and one of them's struggling, and because it all contributes. And I really like people too, so that helps a lot. But I would say, yeah, anxiety, depression, insomnia are probably the top ones that start out with me. So excited about this launch that we're doing. What I found is that there are quite a number of patients when I ask, how are you doing? Is it better? I get very vague answers with zero data points because a lot of people also don't have insight into like, is it better or is it not? Did I sleep better? Da, da, da. So there's a thing called the Aura Ring. So I don't have it on right now, of course, but it measures biomarkers like your oxygen saturation, your heart rate, your sleep, and it's really accurate because it actually tracks the capillaries. So you're getting more precise information. So, like today, this other patient was wearing an Apple Watch, which was fine. So we were tracking his sleep, and he's like, oh, yeah, I woke up today feeling much more rested. And he actually got an hour of deep sleep. But we were looking over the data from the last year, and I'm like, you don't get deep sleep more than an hour. Like, it's always consistently lower. And so it was just like super insightful for him. And then another variation, or another thing that we measure too, is a heart rate variability. And so it's a calculation that helps us to understand your resiliency, like how stressed you've been, how much again, that resiliency you might have for the next day versus like, oh my gosh, that heart rate variability is really low. You need to take it easy. You need to, start taking care of yourself more. But when I can use that as a practitioner, I can actually have data and to compare the facts to what the patient's saying. And it's helping them get more insight into how they're feeling and what it means to feel better. The other thing we're doing is a continuous blood glucose monitor. And I remember actually talking to somebody about this that was like, no, I don't, it's ridiculous. We need to, save the sensors for people who have diabetes. Now, I think the misunderstanding is that Dexcom has come out with cash pay. You don't need a prescription for it, and there's plenty, and it's really not that expensive. They come in these little like sensors that are about, I think they're like $90 for two of them because they only last 2 weeks. And I honestly don't think people need it ongoingly. I think a month or two of using it and having those data points along with the biostats from either the watch or the ring, and like writing down symptoms or marking down when we had a med change or when we had a different intervention and seeing how that plays out in real life. And what's really fascinating about the blood glucose monitor is how much it affects mood, and that being your blood glucose. You're like, I remember coming home from the gym one day and I was like, a just soul crushing feeling. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I felt super depressed, like without a reason. And my patient a couple weeks prior had said that her blood glucose was dropping and she was noticing some depression symptoms. Well, I was wearing the blood glucose monitor at that time, so I looked at it and sure enough, my blood, it was like 50 and dropping. I ate and literally within a couple minutes I was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel normal again." So it's just those little things that we don't realize throughout the day that we think are like maybe, I'm depressed when it's not depression, or anxious, because if you're low on sugar, blood glucose, then sometimes you get shaky and kind of nervous feeling. So those physical symptoms can mimic the psychological symptoms or vice versa. So the I'm really excited because I want to get about 20 people to join this kind of pilot study so I can start to put together programs for people who want to learn more insight into their daily behaviors and how things are affecting them, and get more precision in their treatment and actually get to the root cause and feel better ongoing. So super excited about that. Guys, I am so excited about this new pilot study that I'm running. Wearable technology these days has been absolutely revolutionary. I'm using right now the Aura Ring, which of course I don't have on right now, but it's able to give us a lot more insight into what's going on in real time. Like if you're having sleep issues, I can see what the sleep stages are. Another one is a continuous blood glucose monitor, which is now being offered by Dexcom without a prescription. And so they have given us a lot of resources in order to be able to use it. So if you're interested, DM me, send us an email. Would love to get you started on it. And it's already had amazing success so far. This is Evie. She's the office dog. She's honestly better at my job than I am. She's usually at the office, but for those who have allergies, we put her in another room. But honestly, such a snuggler. She's so good at reading people's emotions. So she can tell somebody's crying, she'll go over and just like lay on them. And if she can tell they're getting just not wanting attention, she just gets right off and goes and sleeps in the corner. But she is everybody's favorite, including mine. And she's goofy. Anxiety is probably one of the top things people come in for. So here's my top 3 recommendations that you can do on your own without even having to see me. L-theanine is a natural amino acid found in tea, and at higher doses, it can be used for calming. I typically recommend around 200 milligrams. Again, you need to talk to your provider about it, but that's a really good supplement to add in as needed. It doesn't feel like you're taking Xanax or something like that. It's just yeah, I do feel more calm. And that's why people who drink tea tend to not get the shakes with the caffeine, because that's counteracting the shakes. A second thing, I was surprised by this, an ice plunge. I hate the cold, hate it with all of my being. But when you do like the sauna to a cold plunge, there is something about how it calms the nervous system down. That was like one of my big, it was like a thing that I wanted to accomplish so badly, and finally was able to do it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, immediately it felt just like calm and happy and all the things. So I recommend that. And probably the third thing is to get in nature. Like, whatever you do, get out of this, out of concrete everywhere. Just go on a trail, even if it's for 10 minutes. It is unbelievable how much it calms without anything except existing here. But yeah, those are probably the top 3 that I have found to be most effective for myself and for others.